certification in all things quality, Lean, Six Sigma, as most of you participate in. But we also have our little sister company, which we split us into two, but we're all under one heading, called Impro, which is our online services, and we started that about 5 years ago. Impro was actually the name of our international conference on quality, which is short for improvement, and we decided to keep the name and use it for all our online learning, which has paid off quite a bit in this past few months. So thank you to all of you. If you are in this picture, I'm honored and thrilled to finally be a participant here. I could give you the joke that my son said. He said, I'm finally now old enough to be part of this group, which I took offense to because I would have liked to have been there at 30, but he now runs the Institute, and we'll see how fast his 30 years go. So I thought I'd give you a quick picture about me. Yes, my birthday is tomorrow. I graduated college in 1979 and started teaching as a high school industrial art teacher, teaching electronics and wood shop. From there, I lasted 2 years and started a family, got married in 1980, and joined the Perkin-Elmer Corporation as a technical trainer for analytical instrumentation. And it was at Perkin-Elmer where I really got all my experiences in the beginning, which led me to Quality and Juran Institute. I'll talk more about that on my personal journey. I later then became Director of Quality Programs. I moved from technical training and running the training organization into quality, which at the time, probably the best description of it is I would have been a master black belt way back then. I got my master's degree in business administration with a concentration on human resource training and development. I also then continued teaching at Western Connecticut State University as an adjunct, and then later at Central Connecticut, and then we would fill in occasionally for Bland at Columbia and a few other places around the country, and I'll probably end up going back to this in the near future. I joined Juran Institute in 1988, and I went from the only assistant vice president, which everybody was vice president but me, up to working for Bland and under Bland, and then when Bland left, replacing Bland, which has been a great run. I also then got an honorary doctorate degree, which I'm very proud of, and I continue to surprise myself, and now I'm part of the International Academy for Quality, and I'm very happy to be there. A little bit about my family story. One of 7 kids, 6 brothers and a sister, Italian immigrants. I started our family in 1980, and like Roger Hurl, went 32 years, lost my previous wife. And my 3 kids have now grown up and have turned into 3 married children with 6 grandchildren. There are 5, and then there is 1. And my new family, which now, if you notice, I had 3 boys, and now I have 2 girls. So it's been a very interesting journey. And the little one there crying in the middle is basically how I think about every day, thinking about quality. So my hobby, I'm on the board of Farm Aid, which is Willie Nelson's organization to help family farmers and to create more homegrown products around the world. Those ugly gentlemen in the bottom are the 4 founders of Farm Aid: Dave Matthews, Willie Nelson, John Mellencamp, and Neil Young. So I support them, and they're based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I also have a dog, and his name is Cappuccino, which we just call Chino. So where's that journey? I mentioned Perkin-Elmer, and I had a great opportunity when I joined Perkin-Elmer, and then later went into the quality area. The interesting thing was, it's kind of a funny story. As I was completing my master's degree, I wanted to get a job as the director of training and development, and there were no jobs available within our company. So I left I left and looked out. I didn't leave. I went outside and looked for jobs. And out of 200 applicants, I came in number 2 at Otis Elevator for Director of Training and Development. And I asked him why I didn't get the job. And he said, because you didn't know who Duran and Deming were. And that was around 1985. And it was coincidentally within months, there was a posting on the board at PerkinElmer, which is the internal board, that they're looking for this manager at the time of quality programs. And I went down and met the HR person, and he said, yeah, we're introducing a new quality business plan here at PerkinElmer to help us compete through quality. And we've hired the Duran Institute. And I said, who? He said, the Duran Institute. I said, well, tell me about this guy, Duran. And I ended up getting the job. And coincidentally, 3 years later, I ended up working for Duran, and also at the time at Dr. Deming, et cetera. So I went from not knowing who they were to kind of curiosity about them, and became a practitioner. While at PerkinElmer, we went from a very, very struggling mid-1980s from Japanese competition in analytical instrumentation. And we fought back, and we actually fought back, and at the time probably was close to runner-up to Motorola, which was probably the wrong people to compete against for the Baldrige at the time. But the experience of 3 years of working with Duran and Deming and Crosby and through PerkinElmer and applying for the Baldrige led me to leave there and join the Duran Institute. And I had some really great early clients while there in the initial couple years. The great thing about Duran Institute, they let you develop your own clients, by tossing you out there. And I also had some great people. Obviously, Dr. Duran was still around, and Bland Godfrey was a little bit younger then. And I threw Grace up there because she's been a big, strong proponent of me lately. Frank Greida was our mentor within the Institute, along with some more relative new guys like Watson. And I cannot go without mentioning Stuart Hunter as well. But had some great people along the way, and then, began to start to publish. And I have over 100 good publications, I think. And I've resumed ownership of, not ownership, but editorialship of writing the books that Duran had before. And so within this little journey, it got me to where I am now. And so where am I now? The two areas of interest are improving the skills of quality practitioners, which each presentation has talked about so far, and I'm going to add my little take on why. The second, and obviously I've been at the Duran Institute, and we provide training and education and certification. So naturally, we want to monitor who those people are and what skills they're learning. And I use quality practitioners here, and I noticed that David Hutchins mentioned quality professional and wanted a definition, but I would say that the quality professional are the full-time responsible for some facet of quality, whether it be quality and design, quality and control, or quality improvement. And I'm calling the quality practitioners those folks plus anyone participating in those activities. And I'll explain more about why we do that. The second one is, and also Roger Hurl, who I respect a lot and have read a lot and learned a lot from him over the years, try to understand why there's so much variation in how to make quality happen. While Roger was speaking, I can see the whole Duran outline of our, going back to when I joined Duran Institute, called Making Quality Happen. And it lists all of those elements that he talked about, particularly the chief quality officer. Dr. Duran always used the analogy of why quality, he compared it to finance. That you have a financial officer, you should have a quality officer. You have financial controls, you have quality controls. You have financial improvement, you have quality improvement. And we use that as kind of the basis to help leadership understand what to do. The good thing is that we also have variation within our own, our industry, our practitioners, and even within our company, because there's people came from, Duran Institute is a collection of people from being practitioners around the world coming into one place, and we all adapted to each other and we added some things to each other. But you think at some point, and I think I was in Turkey when someone asked the question, Feigenbaum was on the dais at the time too, and a few other of us were there. One young person stood up and said, why are there so many different books on how to manage for quality? Shouldn't there just be, one guidebook? And most recently, I was trying to do some research on what is a common quality management system, the little Q piece. And if you don't pick ISO, there's a billion other versions. So those are the two areas I have personally, as I've now less managing, and I'm not responsible for running the business anymore. I'm just working on research and development, and kind of the way that Bland and Dr. Duran went, getting more into the academician side. The other three things they're more related to institute. We trying to figure out how to educate another generation of practitioners and not forget who Duran was. I like, and I have always focused on cost of poor quality, and I think there's a lot of improvement that can happen in helping people understand how to do cost of poor quality and its benefit. And I'm also still trying to figure out if there's a need for a Duran Handbook 8th edition. I am amazed that Dr. Duran was able to get to the 4th edition. Bland took over on the 5th and 6th. I joined on the 7th, 6th and 7th. But the question is, do we need another one? And it's something that I have to ponder and answer quickly this year. And the reason I'm a little skeptical is there's so much out there. What new can we bring to the table? And we're trying to define what that was. So let me focus on these two areas of interest here. Improving the skills of quality practitioners. We have been conducting what we call the quality skills assessment. And it is it's varied over the decades, but about 100 questions. 80 of them are done written, and 20 of them are done in a kind of an oral interview that we conduct, and we have a rubrics, and we capture the responses. And the amazing thing is that I'm still shocked in my 30 plus years that over 50% of the individuals score in the bottom quartile. In answering, it's not a CQE exam, it's not a black belt exam. We believe are those areas of knowledge that every quality practitioner should know. Something as simple as, what does process capability mean? How to calculate the mean from 6 digits. A little bit about quality history. Mainly, we group them into these 7 categories, and all related to what we believe is using Roger's word, a holistic approach to quality management. And so there are questions related to teamwork and coaching, because we believe the role of quality is one of consultative. You're there to help others learn. Obviously, you can't manage data without understanding data analytics and stats. We break out root cause analysis because it's such an important part of business, and that it gets lost in the statistical analysis section. So we have questions related to that. Quality theory is really quality methods. What are the methods to improve, like DeFeo? What are the methods to quality by design, et cetera? Process control, because it's such an important process control, quality control. Critical thinking, where they have problem solve, basic strategic issues that they have to resolve, and then assessment and auditing. And most of you dabble in these kind of things, and it was really great to hear the presentation, 2 presentations before me, about very similar responses that he had gotten from the data in Scotland. And the interesting thing about our skill assessment, whether we look at this worldwide, country by country, industry by industry, it's the same thing, that the people working in jobs related to quality don't know what they need to know to do that job. And we're trying to always understand and find out why. And at the same time, the movement from manual to digital is going to create even a bigger gap in this because, as Roger mentioned, you got a lot of data that needs to be interpreted. You got a lot of data that can be used for root cause analysis. And so, what do you have to use and do to be successful? A couple of the theories we've had, and we've kind of proven them along the way, is that the biggest gap is that a lot of the quality jobs, particularly in manufacturing, have been defined so narrowly that if I'm in, say, an automotive company or a consumer goods company making appliances, my job might be to just be an auditor. And I audit to this criteria. And all I have to know is how to audit. I don't have to know what process capability is. I don't have to ever done a DFMEA. I just have to know, did you do it and check the box? That's one theory. And there's some realism to that. Another one is that their jobs are narrow and that they only participate in certain things. Like I get involved in the sign off of a PPAP and we do a DFMEA. I've done that, but I don't do anything else. So there's this narrowing of the job function. But yet at the same time, when you talk to leadership in that same organization, they're looking for much more out of these quality functions. They want the assessor to be a consultant to solve the problem. They want the person doing the DFMEA to lead others to do that. They're looking for them to help on the statistical analysis. So leadership sees a broader view, but yet the jobs are narrow. And the more we do it, the more I get disappointed that we're just losing ground. And if you look at the graph on the right, what's the strongest of these folks? Assessment and auditing. It's also happens to be, one they've been doing for a while. Think of the ISO standards, a lot of assessment going on. The interesting thing is with this quarantine, there's going to be a lot less physical assessment and auditing. And I think it's going to take a whole chunk of people away from this function once again. So the one area that we spend a lot of time on, and I've written papers about, and we included in our publications, is these skills. And then we, as an institute, we provide various online learning experiences, whether they're through a training course, a webinar, or facilitating various activities within an organization to try to close those gaps. The good thing is our post scores improve statistically significantly 1 year after the same people take it and they go through the curriculum. So what we do know is people can learn and pass the exam, but more importantly, they can't take the exam unless for instance, unless you've done a Six Sigma project or unless you've done a process capability study. There are various things for various topics. So we know that there's a solution. We just, to the learning part of it, we're just not sure why jobs are narrow and so narrow. And I think it has a lot to do with the dumbing down of many jobs within manufacturing anyway. The second area is trying to understand why there's so much variation in making quality happen. And hopefully you know that when we use the word quality at Jurian, we're talking about big Q transformation. And I'm using this picture, which is our way of thinking about building the house of quality. There's chicken and egg here. Who came first? There's the Toyota Way, there's the Shingo Prize, there's the Baldrige criteria. All of them are building this house of quality. All of them have a little bit differences between the EFQM and the Baldrige and all other international awards and criteria. But within there's got to be some commonality. Dr. Dran talked about the universal principles, and Deming talked about the 14 points, and all of us talk about them plus our own versions of that. So I'd love to answer that student's question, what is the definitive way to go from here to there? And I don't think there is going to be a definitive way, but there clearly should be some commonalities. And one of the reasons I really wanted to be part of the IAQ is because I think that they are in the best position to be the authority on this is the way to go from here to there. If not, I'm not sure who else is going to do it, because anyone else is going to have a much narrower global view on that. So that's my second one. As part of joining IAQ, and I'm not sure all the different think tanks they have, obviously the one that I just mentioned, improving the skills is important. But I think Roger touched upon this too. Seeking new ways to make improvement happen faster. As we, Duran, talk about the technological side, the need to change something that may require instrumentation or equipment, and then the cultural side, which may require people to act faster and move quicker. I'm thinking about them from both perspectives. What do we have to do to make it happen faster? Why is it that, you know, leadership in a great company will always supersede quality improvement with cost reduction? And the belief is that the cost reduction happens faster. Is there a way to get fast cost reduction and fast quality improvement, which would make it a lot more successful? I also have spent a lot of time, mainly because a lot of you guys are traveling around the world taking on the big jobs. I'm left with some of the smaller countries around the world and kind of adopted some of them. I love going to Croatia and Serbia and smaller countries around the world, but new economies and their growth through quality. You know, we can always look to Taiwan and Japan as America was growing up learning about quality and how these little countries were so successful. You know, can that be replicated today in some of these smaller countries or smaller economies like African economies, as well as others around the world? And then the last one is, you know, the ultimate. How do you get more students to want a career in quality? At the same time, it's consistently not seen as for what it's worth. If you look at Harvard Business Review timeline of the entire life of Harvard Business Review, quality revolution got one little line on it. And so how do college students see a career in quality? And so these are the areas that I would like to continue my interest as I grow older and travel less and research more and study more, and kind of where I am going in my future. So that's who I am, that's where I am at, and I love to hear from anybody and look forward to hearing from any of you who either are in this picture or not in this picture. And that is it. So thank you for giving me an opportunity this morning and getting up early. Since quarantine started, 6 o'clock is really early. So I would like to be happy to turn it back to you, Liz, and if there's any questions.
Thank you, Joe. So any questions from anybody?
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question.
Zygmunt.
Is my video on, by the way?
You're still sharing, Joe.
Okay.
When I look on your survey for quality professional knowledge, this is this slide, yeah. You know, not surprisingly, we see a very big problem in statistics, but auditing, how you explain that the percentage of poor auditing knowledge is so high?
And that's a bad thing. I think it's the same. My theory is that it's the same thing, that they audit very narrow pieces of the organization. For instance, supplier quality only audits suppliers. And so they only understand that. And manufacturing shop floor auditors only audit a certain piece. We've broken these down so small that they don't get the experience. And so when you ask a question about, you know, what does this mean, they don't have an answer. And I'll give you more specifically. Multinational company operating in over 12 different countries. We had this in 8 different languages: Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, English, a couple of Europeans, Russian, Polish. And no matter where it was within this company, it came out the same way, which means the system that they're working in is creating this narrow understanding and therefore failing at some of the other questions. But within that same company, the people who took the exam said, well, I don't need to know that for my job. And we said, yes, for maybe the way you've defined it, But if you can't leave that job and go into a new job and know nothing, or you can't leave that company and go somewhere else and expect to find that same narrowness. So our worry is that their application is narrow, their knowledge is narrow, but the need is still great, and they're going to need to load these things. The interesting, that is the best score of all the scores, the assessment one. At least 50% of the people pass that. You would think that process control and root cause analysis would also be high, and they're not. And this is, and now we're doing in the last couple of years, we're doing more with quality practitioners, meaning engineering, design engineering, also non-manufacturing companies, but particularly engineering, non-quality related jobs, where you're looking at operations, supply chain folks. And it's only worse because, yeah, they're better at teamwork and coaching. They're better at maybe critical thinking, but they don't know any of the theory, right, that you would learn as a CQM, CQE, Chartered Quality Institute professional, whatever. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, so it's almost 50-50. 50% doesn't think, and 50% are excellent.
I would like to say that 51% are not good, but we have a very small percent that does well on all 7 categories. I think it's only about 8% of the people actually, quote, pass all 7 categories.
Hi, Joe.
Hello,
welcome
Grace.
to IAQ. Thank you. Yes. Quick question. So the 5,000 skill assessments, is that like just in the United States or globally?
No, they're globally and typically global companies.
That's right. And so, like, just from listening from Gigi's presentation earlier, how do you connect your results with, the results that he found?
So because we've been doing this over many decades, we try to, look at it in phases, but we conduct the assessment with the client. So they may have 500 people or 1,500 people, and they're set up to do a written online exam. Years ago, it was paper and pencil, online exam, and then we have a 1-hour online, face-to-face, I should say online, webinar-based lately in the last couple of years, interview with the person. And so they have the scoring online. We have a rubrics that we score, and then we combine those, and we get this chart and other charts that we can get. And then the information goes back to the client. We examine it by location. We examine it by function. We examine it by within their organization. Sometimes the job classification demonstrates experience. So there's a lower level, mid-level, and higher level. So we go back to them with some analysis of it, say, here's what you have. And then we work with them to say, where are you going? And we put a training package together, that some of which is online, some of which is on the job. And then we work hand in hand to close those gaps. But it's not, we have an example skills assessment on our website, but we don't open it up to thousands and thousands of people. This is all the people we've had, and it's just accumulation of knowledge that we have from those particular clients. Because it's global and because it's been done for a number of years, I think it's pretty representative. I would be shocked if we found various differences anywhere on someone else's assessment. I don't know what ASQ does with their data, but if they were to go back and assess CQEs today, 1,000 of them, I bet you'd probably find the same thing. If you don't practice it, you lose it. So,
Joe, this is Sunil Sinha.
Hi, nice to meet you. You just went on mute. I think you hit your mute button. Sunil, I think you hit your mute button. There you go. Oh, am I alone here?
No, it's showing that I have to relaunch the Zoom.
Okay, so it sounds like Sunil is having problems, so he'll be back with us shortly, I'm sure. Any other questions or comments?
I'm Kamran, Joe. A very good presentation and very insightful. My question, first, one question is from this slide you're just showing. Actually, critical thinking to me is very important, but critical thinking is also related to problem solving and correlated with statistics. These three things are quite interrelated, you know, and one of the issue is about the basically deployment of these attributes in the culture, because continuous improvement also requires continuous learning. So my in the whole thing, continuous learning organization is one of the very important prerequisites to continuous improvement as well. In your whole things, all these parameters which you have studied, what about the learning aspect of individuals and organization? Because I tend to see that sustainability is not there because people tend to stop learning. After they do some course, after a few years, they are outdated. But we tend to not to learn more and not to tend to learn more even with passage of time. So what do you think about how to improve the learning aspects of organization? And don't you think that's one of the root cause of many of these parameters to be strengthened?
Yeah, let me address the first part, the critical thinking. So on the assessment, the critical thinking is just what you said. They've got problems that they're reading and they have to respond to it. Those problems require thought as to how to approach it, and then some analytical capability to how to solve it. So you're absolutely correct that critical thinking is that combination. It's also the most difficult for us to try to create a training event to help improve critical thinking. It's the one area where if you don't have an organization that is continuously improving, doing continual learning, that you're not getting opportunities to be in critical thinking environments. So one, it's difficult to actually create online training programs that drive critical thinking scores up. But in organization, the second part of your question, this is very different. The answer to your question is very different if I looked at the different countries and different companies and different industries. There are some industries that are just driven by continual learning. And, you know, I could cite pharmaceutical industries. I could cite high-tech electronics. You know, the higher tech, higher skill, higher regulatory, there are a lot of continual learning. The larger the company, the more learning systems they have. The problem within those organizations that have continual learning is that they're allowing now they're pushing the learning onto the individual employee versus a group. They're saying you're responsible for continuous learning. We're going to provide you thousands of workshops. You got to pick your path. And so, but the problem with that is they may not be tied to the strategy of the company. So they may go down a personal path, but might miss out within the company. And also, they don't know necessarily what they need to know. So there's got to be some overlap between the company goals, the individual goals, and what's out there in the industry. So that multinational company, for example, that we talked about, they've said, you know, in the next 3 years, this is where we want all quality professionals to be. In the next 5 years, this is where we want the non-quality professionals, or what they call quality practitioners, to be. And we want you to improve your score on these areas. Here's the programs to do that. And so they're linked together. Unilever is another one that links those together. But if you're in a small organization and you don't have that structure, you're left to coming to people like us, you know, the ASQs and the Charter Quality Institute and the individual consultants. What should I learn? And the problem with that is, you know, you're narrow. You're only going to teach you what we have to offer. So there needs to, you know, universities have the same problem. They're broader in what they offer, but they still have their own slant on it. So I think that this skills assessment only works in organizations that are continuously learning and continuously improving. No one's going to take it if they're not in that kind of organization. So from that aspect, it's probably a very narrow representation.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Joe, this is Sunil, I'm back.
Thank you. We can hear you.
Yeah. Joe, first of all, welcome to IAQ, and thank you very much for a wonderful, very informative presentation. I have a comment and there is an associated small question along with that. I remember in late 80s, Duran Institute took a major lead in churning out content for project by project approach to quality management. And there was 16 volumes of audio visuals. There were facilitators manual, there were leaders manual, there were quality tools manual. And I think this material or this kind of training program which you initiated, it really helped common line managers to understand the journey from symptom to root cause to remedy, and remedy to holding the gains. And it also helped line managers to do a bit of diagnostician's role, because they understood tools, techniques, bit of quality. Question is, do you still do that? And since you were one of the pioneers, as I know, in quality management, I'm very surprised that with that kind of tools, techniques, learning methodologies that you created, we still see the knowledge base of quality managers, which you have shown in your slide, as not adequate to deal with the complex quality problems. Your view.
Yeah, so two things. One, the Duran on quality improvement videotapes you're referring to, which there were 16 that a lot of us at PerkinElmer was a customer at the time, learned, is the basis for all the online learning and our classroom products. So the answer to that is yes, it still exists. And the good thing is that when we are working with the client, we do see the scores improve. So we know you can learn and benefit from that. I don't know what other people are learning from, but this goes back to my issue of common knowledge. So for instance, what I learned as project by project improvement became the way Six Sigma improvement happens. It's project by project, but a lot of the Six Sigma application, companies, because there's no necessarily a quality crisis, there's a cost crisis, would aim these at the wrong things. And so when we're working with customers of ours, we can steer them, we can help them, we can educate them. But there are other practitioners out there that are teaching Six Sigma not as a quality improvement methodology, but as a variation reduction and cost reduction methodology. So here you have a common set of tools. One was on Duran's videotapes, one's everyone's learning, but utilizing it in a different way. And that's where I think a lot of methods go wrong, is when they try to apply something like it's either all lean or nothing, or it's all Six Sigma or nothing, or quality improvement. That's an old term, so we don't do that. The reality is, and this is why we like, what we do, is that universal concept, universal principle behind it all should be well known. And that's in my son's got the responsibility now for managing all that online content and creating new content and getting a new group of people to understand what we would sit through in 16 30-minute videos. You need to get it down to 16 5-minute webcasts, and then hopefully they'll want to go off and read a book or learn more about it. Dr. Musa?
Yeah.
Thank you, Sunil.
Any other thoughts or questions?
I have a quick question, Joe. This is Giju here. Can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Yes, okay. One of your points or interest was increasing the number of students to want a career in quality. It's quite interesting actually point when you actually, as an academic for the past 28 years or so in 3 different universities in the United Kingdom, my experience is that when you approach students, whether they are business students or they could be engineering students, when you approach them, quality is a topic which is not at all interesting to them. Not at all means, I would say, if you ask about 100 students in the classroom, I would say maybe less than 5 are keen to progress in quality management. So the question is to you is, of course, not only just to you, people who are listening to this, is how do we increase the number of students? What do we need to do across the world to bring quality back into business?
Well, there's two parts to that. One is how to bring it back into business, and secondly, how to get college students that want to go into that. I think the second part is actually easier than the first part. Obviously, the clients that we work with, we can always say those leaders are interested. But in general, you know, there's not a quality crisis like I faced in the 1980s when I was working, and most of us started our careers. There was a real problem in the quality of the good. I think there's an equal problem today in quality of the service. That's a different discussion. And the role, and I think Roger pointed out, the role of strategically looking at that as an important function has to change. And the only way it's going to be looked at as an important function is if we as the practitioners change the way we look. I think the whole concept behind ASQ and all the associations along the way have to hold a higher standard, have to be viewed as the voice, the true voice, and able to get that recognition, whether we're got quality events or not quality events, just as a good business practice. Once that happens, then students are going to be more apt to go into it. But the area where the students are more apt to go into it are where those universities are actually created programs to educate students so that when they do go into business, they'll act that way. And there's maybe 40 that have in the United States anyway that have real quality management programs. It's not a statistical course embedded in the statistical program. It's a business class in the business program, or it's a business class in the engineering program. So the universities that actually are pulling students because they have a program are also helping the cause. And I think that, like I said, that's an easier one because you can get your universities to really start looking at those quality practitioners in the same way you look at financial practitioners. I think you'll start to see more of them. Because when you ask students, you know, everybody wants to be Lean Six Sigma. When you ask them about quality, they say, well, what is that? It's one and the same. So why is there a disconnect? It's just the way they're being explained to.
Yeah.
So I think we need to see a lot more. And you know what else? If we don't, our whole industry is just gonna, it's like peeling an onion.
Thank you, Joe. Thank
Joe,
you.
can I just like make one more comment? So I think Juju has a good point, you know, increasing more students and, you know, training more. But where I work, I do my consulting work in the healthcare field, and I work with physicians and physicians in training called residents in the US. And to them, they're not going to go back to school, you know, but they still need to learn about QI, quality improvement. And I think for them, since these are like adult learners, it's really making it more understandable, more approachable, and more sensible. It's like what's in it for them and for their patients in terms of delivering patient care. So I think we're really attacking, you know, educating for quality in a very broad range. You know, those that we can, you know, grow and nurture, you know, from a young age, and those, you know, who are adult learners but still need to learn about quality.
You know, we used to break our business up into 3 parts at the Institute. Bland could jump in if you'd like, but, you know, manufacturing, non-manufacturing, and healthcare. And at first, I didn't want anything to do with healthcare because I just didn't think they would get it. And I was in manufacturing and service. Today, it's healthcare, manufacturing, and service in that order. So there's a big opportunity in healthcare, and there's a big need, and there's a group of people who really wanted to learn it and change it. And, you know, I had the pleasure of being thrown into that as young in my career to learn how to adapt it in a healthcare environment. And today is clearly the proof of the need is there based on, you know, everything we just saw in the United States anyway, for the past 4 months. It kind of looked like the quality disasters of the 1980s that we had when we were younger. So I think that, you know, healthcare, they've been leading the way in Baldrige in the last decade, and they'll probably lead the way further because they have a need. The service companies, on the other hand, I just don't get it. I just don't understand why they're getting worse and worse. And that's everywhere from fast food to online. I mean, Amazon is a great, you know, example of delivery service. But these face-to-face things are just still way behind, and I don't get service quality. I keep trying to, but I don't get it. And it's different than a hospital. Hospital looks more like manufacturing than it does an insurance company. So.
Just one quick question, Joe. Do you have, with Joran Institute, has any experience of working in close collaboration in courses with any university, number one? Because I've been influencing our higher education council to put quality courses in the various curriculum. But their point of view is that there are already so many courses, so they are not ready to fill or introduce not more than even a single course in some of their disciplines, just because they say there is no room for other courses other than their professional courses. And that's why they the introduction of quality courses in the academia, in whether it is MBBS in medical or engineering, are very few courses, and they don't find any room for such courses. They say when the student will get out, they will learn from the market or from the corporate trainings.
To answer your question, yes, we have worked with a number of over time, but you got Bland Godfrey, who left Iran and went to North Carolina State. You got Rick Edmond was down at Arizona State. You got Roger at Union College, and I'm going to guess they're all there for the same thing. They're part of curriculums. But it's interesting to say there's no room. I think the room is within the syllabus, not the program itself. In other words, what does the industrial engineering curriculum look like? What does the financial curriculum look like? And what's in there? So try to sell them on what's its topic on those programs, not the program in itself. Yes, there are some quality management programs out there, but get it within the curriculum, I think, is the starting point, because then then the students can get exposed to it.
I agree with you 100%, Joe. I think that's exactly where we need to be.
You know, I mean, I can only speak for North Carolina State because Bland went there, but you know, they ended up with a huge following, a huge curriculum, but I'm going to guess it came through the textile program, not its own quality management program. So when you look at, and I'm familiar with one that I participated in here in Connecticut, you know, it took one professor, Dr. Fearon, who became a Juran Fellow, to just drive it through his business program, because that's what he saw as important. And the irony, after 20 years of doing this, he retired 2 years ago, and guess what happened to the course? It ended, just ended. You know, 20 years are great. You know, we give out scholarships every year, and it ended. Not one professor would pick that up and run with it again.
I'd like to make a comment, if I may. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I've been doing this program with the European Students of Industrial Engineering and Management now for 6 years. And we now have 1,000 students teaching Greenbelt training, or have been through Greenbelt training, 100 who are certified instructors in 88 universities. We don't have any professors involved. And what it is students teaching students. And a couple of the universities give them university credit. They can transfer it through Erasmus back to their own school and get 6 ECTS or 10 ECTS if they do a project credit towards a master's degree. And what I found really exciting is that the kids take it on because they say, we're doing something practical the professors can't. They don't care about the word quality. They care about Can I go into a job and deliver value that is seen and packaged as something exceptional? And when we get these kids and they go do an internship, they're typically the top 1% of the interns in the companies because they know how to do something practical. And they have no problem finding jobs. And I think in this new generation of kids, this self-teaching community reinforcement process is something we have to think about. I don't know that we need, I think, Joe, you hit it right on the head. We don't necessarily need to teach quality. We have to embed quality in the curricula that are there. So these industrial engineers see this as part of what they do, just like statisticians can see this as part of what they do as statistical engineering, or chemical engineering, they say process technologies in chemistry and so forth. And so how we actually do those things. And in the humanities, when we're talking about humanities, we have political science or sociology. How do they do those analysis? How do we improve social systems? And there's a quality component in that also, but we don't have to call it quality. Because I think many people are carrying that old model of quality. It's the auditors, and I don't want to be one of them. And I remember when I got into doing quality, I didn't want to be one of them. I was interested in Hoshin Conry and benchmarking and all these other things, because that was management stuff. And all this other stuff I'd done before, and I wasn't interested in a career in just doing math. So I think we have to think about what's a new way to package this whole thing and get back to the basics and how we do that. I think
You
this has
mentioned
come
the
across
gap
from a
with the
couple of us.
professors. You mentioned that gap with the professors. You know, what are they? Where are they getting their influence from if they're, you know?
Well, the professors are all looking for tenure, and quality doesn't have many advanced areas where you can do research in or so forth. And I keep saying here, I'm coming up with master's thesis. I'm coaching about 20 master's students right now on their thesis work. And we're doing things like Kalman filtering applications instead of SPC. You know, how do you do that in a multivariate technology environment supporting an industry 4.0 application? That's quality stuff. It's going to be what we have to deal with. And I think that one of the things we can't do is we can't say, oh, go and XBAR our chart. You know, that's totally obsolete stuff. It's got wrong sampling methodologies and so forth, you know, and so we have to think, how will our tools actually meet the needs that are really there in these new environments? And then how do we excite the kids who can learn about Python or R or something like this? How do we excite them to actually use those applications, but to be able to think in a quality way? I think this is what Kamran was saying about the critical thinking component. You know, and all of those need to come together in each of those disciplines. And I don't know how to do this, but I think that we've heard this message pretty clearly. We've heard it from Jiju. We heard it from you, Joe. We've heard. I expect we're going to hear again when we listen to Rick, you know, and so forth. So everybody is saying the same things. We've got to figure out, how do we package this in a way that appeals to that next generation? Not that appealed to me 20 or 30 years ago, but how will it appeal to them? And then how do we package that up and not think about doing it the same old way?
Liz, can I jump in for a minute?
Go ahead, Bob.
Yes, but I would like to get moving on pretty quickly because we're nearing almost 4 hours on our call.
I'll be happy to do that. I think the issue that we're discussing right now is something that we need to make a major focus on in the future. In the 80s, David Kearns and John Akers from Xerox and IBM said, we're teaching our suppliers, our most important suppliers, a university. We've got to get them involved in quality. They met with the top research universities. The answer was, get lost, we're not interested. They tried to adopt their alumni universities. They said, get lost, we're not interested. We are still at a point where most universities don't get it. There's 125 universities, and I'll finish with this thought, that have a leader in trees, which we talked about earlier, an advanced innovation system, and they can't get the university to get it in the curriculum. So I think you've touched on something that should be a future agenda of the Academy. I'm done.
And Bob, I was in that meeting when Kearns and Akers and John Young brought all of their quality groups together with the 20 deans of MBA schools. And I still remember the Harvard dean's comment. He says, that's fine that works in practice, but does it work in theory?
So Liz, I just thought I'd do one shout out to John Dew, who's on the screen here. When I started, my first presentation in quality ever was at a Duran Impro conference, and John Dew and I were on the dais together. We met each other back in 1986. Ken Starrett was the third person. John is he's a member of IAQ, and he's still kicking along here. So, and the last thing is Portugal is doing a very good job of promoting, you know, the university level quality, not just in curriculum, but also in the annual conferences they're holding. So you got some benchmarks out there that we just need to learn from and build on. And on that, I'll let you guys go, and thank you. I look forward to the rest of the meeting.